So here's another situation from my
Okay.
past that I
Okay.
want to bring up with you now.
Okay. Very good.
This is another startup that I was working at, and
Okay.
my direct boss
Mm-hmm.
was the CEO.
Okay.
And let's just say he had the gift of gab.
Okay. Okay. All right.
It was to the point where I would be leaving the office at the end of the day, and he would still be talking about the next strategy, the next meeting, the next thing that we need to work
Okay.
on that was like
Okay.
super duper important.
Okay.
And I would often just show up late to dinner for my date or late to other meetings. And it was
Mm,
just starting to really take a toll
okay.
on me
Okay.
energetically, and I felt drained.
Okay. It was hard to pull yourself away
It
from
really
him.
was, yeah, because
Okay.
I didn't
Okay.
want to lose my job, essentially. I didn't want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
tell my boss, like,
Yeah.
shut up.
Right, right. So I think we need to acknowledge that there was a power dynamic going on here where this was your boss. He was the CEO.
On top of that,
What was his
yeah.
name again?
Adrian.
Adrian was his name. Okay. So, and that really does make it a risky situation for you to push back or set a
That's
boundary.
exactly what I
Yeah.
felt.
So this is a tricky situation. Yes.
Okay. So how would you handle something like that to
Okay.
start with?
Well, so first of all, what was the culture of the company? Like, would it have been appropriate for you to give him feedback?
It's hard to say because it was a really new, really small startup, about 4 people or so.
Okay.
It was a really hard and fast kind of culture, I guess you
Hmm.
could say. So not really a whole lot of established patterns or
Yeah. Okay.
processes.
Okay. So you were in the process of figuring all that out. Yeah. So now, in terms of you taking risk and pushing back, what kind of situation were you in? Like to take risk, you and push back with the CEO, you risk the potential of getting fired, right?
Right.
I mean that can happen.
Yeah.
So were you in a situation where you could have dealt with that?
At that time, it would have been hard to lose my job,
Hmm.
but I would have figured something out.
Okay. And you trust your ability to do that. So, because everybody has to discern for
Right.
themselves what the right level of risk that they're willing to
Right, of
take.
course.
Right. So, we're going to assume that in this situation that you were willing to take risk,
Mhm.
knowing that that's a very personal thing for everyone.
Right. Mhm.
Right. So, you decide to push back on the CEO. What might that have looked like?
Well, I actually did one time now that I'm thinking about it. I
Okay.
remember it was again at the end of the day, I was really tired
Mm.
and I just wanted to be courteous and say goodbye.
Hmm.
I'm leaving the office for the day. I'll see you tomorrow.
Okay.
So I stopped by his office, and of course again, he did his motor mouth thing.
Okay. He did his thing. Hmm.
And I had just lost patience at that point.
Okay, you had enough.
I had enough.
Uh-huh.
So I did a hand gesture
Oh.
where, I just did this.
Oh.
And then he stopped talking, and I was a little bit surprised in a
Okay.
good way.
In a good
And I
way.
just said, I'm tired.
Oh, good.
I'm leaving the office.
Okay.
I just wanted to say goodbye. I
Excellent.
will see you tomorrow.
Excellent.
Very short sentences.
Very good. Very good. Okay, and so how did that play forward? I mean, did that solve the problem?
In the long term, no. It
Right.
solved the problem in that
In
moment,
that moment. Hmm.
but I felt that I probably needed to do that over and over and over again
Yeah, probably.
to
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
reinforce that.
Yeah. So, one of the things that you can do in this kind of situation when you're willing to take some risk is say to somebody like Adrian, are you willing to hear some feedback?
Ooh, that's feels scary.
I know, right? It's a super scary thing. And it's the kind of thing that somebody could be like immediately tense about,
Yeah.
but you really want to ask permission before you do something like that because you don't want to just mow someone over without their consent. So even though it feels scary for both people, and to get yourself before you bring that up into a place where you've got some calm, you've got some center. Of course, it's going to feel scary as you do this, but you're establishing the culture of the company as you're doing this. So you want to take steps like this to establish something that feels good and is healthy. And if you don't speak up, this is not going to happen.
Mm.
So imagine saying to him, are you willing to hear some feedback from me?
Yeah, that's a really great way to open up
Yeah. And do it and yeah, and do it from a heartfelt
Right,
place
right, right,
where
right.
you're not triggered and you're not tired and you're not fed up, but you're like, okay, I've given myself some space to deal with this. I know I have other options if he decides to fire me. Like, you're in a good place and you're not actually attached to outcome of what's going to happen with this, but you're willing to be kind of exploratory with him and share.
It feels to me that that takes a certain kind of preparation to
It
show up for a
does.
conversation like that.
It really, really does.
So what are
And
some?
yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Well, this is where talking with a coach can really help. So,
Yeah.
what do I
Okay.
do with my triggers? How do I take care of myself to make sure that I'm not sucked in so quickly into this frustration where it can happen, but I'm not being so affected by it? Because what happens is we get sucked into it, and then that person defines our own circumstances, and we're letting them have power over us in a way where we don't want to.
I recognize now, as you're speaking about this, that's exactly what I
Yeah.
did in that
Yeah,
dynamic.
yeah. So by getting centered and clear, you're claiming back your power from this powerful person in the organization to have your own personal power and center and clarity with you. And then, yes, I know it takes a lot of courage to do something like this, but in a startup, that's a good time to experiment with this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, and yet it also feels like there's never the right time
There's
or the
never,
perfect time.
no, there's never a good time. But when we don't do these kinds of conversations, then things perpetuate in the annoying and irritating and life sucking ways that don't work for us. And then we never address these things. And when we do it earlier, rather than letting it wait, then it's really much more effective and efficient because we get communication flowing more easily.
Okay, so this sounds all really good, and yet I feel like I need more.
Chunk, some kind of a chunk here.
Right?
So-
What's the next step that I can
Right.
take?
So let's talk about review what we've talked about so far. So it was you keeping yourself centered and in a place where you have assessed your risk and you're willing to push back and engage in a conversation where you address what was happening with Adrian, right? So it was assess risk, engage in pushback, and keep yourself centered.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Those are the three things, but you want to do the center yourself before you do the pushback.
Right,
Okay.
which is key.
The other thing I want you to think about is that when you do pushback, it's not like he's been mowing you over and now you're mowing him over. So what you want to do is invite a conversation that's co-creative where the two of you figure out a way forward that works for both of you. So it's win-win for both of you.
Right,
Right.
right, right.
And this is the kind of thing that most people don't actually know how to do, that I work with people in my coaching on. And it's how do you have that? Sometimes it's described as a generative conversation where it's like, okay, how do I see this? What do I want? How do you see it? What do you want? And you blend those things together in a way that creates something new for both of you
Okay.
that neither one of you would have known or understood before that conversation.
Okay.
Okay. So what that takes is being clear about what you want, creating an invitation for that kind of a conversation. So are you open to feedback? And give the feedback, but also as you do that, invite the conversation to be, well, I want to be respectful of what it is you want and your passion and what it is you need in this kind of conversation.
Right.
So you invite them to the other person to a specific kind of conversation that's co-creative.
How would I really ground that further?
Right, right. So you don't just listen to this and know how to do it. Yes, that's true. So I've created an 8-week course that takes people into a deep dive.
What's the name of the course?
It's called Define Your True Self, and it guides people into stepping into their power so that they can speak their truth in difficult situations like this, and move into also inviting other people that they're talking with to step into that with them. So it's I'm getting clear about what it is I want and what my perspective is, and I invite that with the other person as well. So you end up creating these conversations that are not just a repeat of the habits of how you've been banging into each other.
Absolutely.
But it's actually collaborative and co-creative in a way that most people actually don't know how to do. But you can learn the skills in a course like mine.